My dad frequently comments, the more he's around people, the more he likes dogs. Can you relate? Human beings are bizarre, unusual creatures. In fact, maybe you'd like to turn someone next to you and say, you're a bizarre, unusual creature. Maybe not, huh? Some of us are a little more bizarre and unusual than others, right? There ain't nothing like people. People can be so kind and compassionate, loving, caring, supportive, encouraging. And people can be so mean and nasty and ugly and just horrible, hateful. And sometimes it's hard to trust people because we know people hurt us and harm us. I learned early that pastoral ministry wasn't a vocation to try to win popularity contests, right? As I've served a wide variety of churches over the years, for the most part, been widely embraced and cherished by many. But there certainly were those who weren't signing up for the Pastor John fan club, right? One of the very first churches that I served, a woman, we'll call her Ethel, was very displeased with something that I did. And she refused to make eye contact with me, refused to be in my presence. And that particular congregation, they didn't have anyone on staff other than the pastor, right? And so they had no custodian, but people took turns coming to clean the church. And one particular Saturday, it was her task cleaning, and she saw me coming up the driveway. The church driveway and the parsonage driveway were one and the same. And she was in such a hurry to not have to talk to me, to not have to be in my presence, that she actually tripped over her cleaning supplies and fell down the church steps. Now, the only thing injured was her pride. But I imagine 17 years later, if I would go to talk with her, she still would not want to look me in the eye, would not want to talk to me. In fact, 10 days ago, I was back to one of my former churches for a funeral, and there was a woman there who refused to look in my general direction. And I don't even know what I did to her. Must have been a day I should have worn a tan sport coat and I wore a blue one or something. You know, you never know. But there ain't nothing like people. Now, we've been talking about things we're afraid of, right? Snakes and spiders in the dark and some of those things. But something that might even be more scary than all of that is people. Because sometimes they say things that really hurt. And sometimes their action causes injury. There can be things that really harm us and hurt us. There was a man who was very well acquainted with persecution and hardship and difficulty from others. It was David, the writer of this 56th Psalm. Did you check out some of those phrases? They're ones we don't hear a whole lot as he talks about what he's facing, that foes oppress me, enemies trample on me. All day long they seek to injure my cause. They stir up strife. Enemies lay in wait. Now, for some of you, you're thinking, that sounds like my typical day on the job. All right, or that sounds like my preschool classroom, or, different things that we face. But for David, this is a period in his life when he's fearful of losing his life. We're told as this psalm begins, he's in Gath, which is one of the Philistine cities, the same city where Goliath grew up. But this is long after Goliath is dead and gone. But David is fearful. Maybe it's the king of Gath who's ready to take his life. Maybe it's some of the Philistine army. Another direct possibility, this is the same time in his life when King Saul is in hot pursuit and ready to put David's life to an end. But he is well aware they're ready to chew him up and spit him out, that he could lose his life at any moment. So in this psalm, David is being brutally honest, and he's revealing his own fears, his own apprehensions. And as we look at verses 3 and 4, they almost seem to be contradicting each other. In fact, let's look at those for a moment. That David writes, "O Most High, when I am afraid, I put my trust in you." So there you go. He's admitting his fear, isn't he? When I'm afraid, I trust. But then look at the next verse. "In God whose word I praise, in God I trust, I'm not afraid." So what are you saying here, David? Are you afraid or are you not afraid? I think he's seeing this transition that he's going through. I'm not afraid. What can flesh do to me? What can people, why should I be afraid of people? He's really reminding himself of this. But all of us, I think there's a part in which we can say, yeah, I'm not afraid, but I'm a little apprehensive. I'm a little nervous getting into this, right? That's just perfectly normal. But David has recognized, God, as I'm praising you, as I'm trusting in you, as I work through this situation, I believe you're going to carry me through. I believe you're going to help me. So we trust God, don't we? We trust in his mercy. We trust in his grace. We trust in his power. We trust whatever we are going through at this very moment that God is going to help us. He's going to carry us through. And I think verse 9 in this psalm really declares David's philosophy, and it should be a good philosophy for our own lives. This I know, that God is for me. You believe that? I didn't see much reaction out there. You believe that? Yeah. As Paul would write to the Romans, if God is for us, who can stand against us, right? There was a country song years ago, God's going to get you for that, right? I'm almost thinking that this celestial being is ready to zap me when I step out of line, right? Well, we have a God who has power who could do that. But ultimately, we see that God is for us. God has our best interests at heart. God wants to bless us and encourage us and help us in the journey. So we keep on trusting. Michael Card, contemporary Christian songwriter, in one of his Christmas songs, writes about Emmanuel. And the words, Emmanuel, our God is with us. And if God is with us, who can stand against us? Our God is with us. Emmanuel. And so this is long before our Savior's coming, long before Christ. But David is recognizing here that God is for him. God is going to help him. And he's relying on that, depending on that. One thing I really appreciate about this Psalm 56 is that David is very vulnerable. He doesn't try to sugarcoat what is going on. He doesn't try to gloss over the reality that this is hard. This is very, very difficult. And verse 8 has a phrase that's, well, it's strange to us in our own language. Let me read it to you in our New Revised Standard Version, and then I'll read it to you in Eugene Peterson's paraphrase. But David writes this, "You've kept count of my tossings." Anybody know tossing? Back and forth, right? You've put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your record? Peterson puts it this way, "You've kept track of my every toss and turn through sleepless nights. Each tear entered into your ledger, each ache written in your book." What is David really talking about here? Now, there actually was an ancient practice that people would save their tears in a bottle. In fact, there you see on the screen some bottles that have actually been found in people's tombs. So throughout their lifetime, people would, perhaps a loved one died, and they're so sorrowful they shed the tears, and they save those tears. Or maybe they're at a wedding, and it's such a wonderful celebration, they shed those tears of joy, and they take their little bottle, and they save the tear. So throughout someone's lifetime, they would continue to collect these tears. So when they were buried, these bottles would be buried right along with them because it really became sacred to them. It was a chronology of their life, of the highs, the lows, the experience, and when they had to depend radically on God. So as David uses this phrase, you know my tossings, you know, and I'm up all night unable to sleep because I'm worried about these things, right? You have my tears in your bottle. David is saying, God, you are well aware of everything I'm going through. God, you know my pain. You know my angst. You know my frustration. You know each and every tear that I shed. You know, there's people we're afraid of. They come in a lot of different shapes and forms, don't they? It's not just antagonists in the church that we might have, huh? It might be a bully in the schoolyard, huh? It might be someone in one of your classes that gets under your skin. It might be that supervisor who is in no way, shape, or form super, huh? It might be a person in your family that you just like to slap upside the head, right? But those things can stir up inside of us this, right? We can just be overwhelmed with it. But David reminds us in this psalm, God knows. God knows what you're facing, knows what you're going through. So continue to trust him. Randy was a man battling cancer at a very young age. At age 41, he had some horrific chemo treatments, very strong doses, and actually became cancer-free, went into remission. Was so excited on this new lease in life, but guess what happened not long after that? The cancer came back with a vengeance. And let me share with you, this is his personal testimony about what God was teaching him through his own time of prayer. He writes, for several years I've prepared for prayer by going through a total relaxation phase to release my body and mind for prayer. After a few moments, I travel in my mind to a place in the North Georgia mountains where I used to go on camping trips. There I built an open structure, a gazebo, where I go to talk with Jesus. Normally I go in, I call for Jesus, and he comes in. We visit, and usually I give him my prayers of thanksgiving and intercessions. It's a conversational sort of setting. In late August, I was completely demoralized with the recurrence of the lymphoma. I was an emotional wreck. I went into prayer. Everything went on as normal until Jesus came to the door of the gazebo. At that moment, a completely unthought of event happened that shook me to tears. I became like a camera recording the event. A 5-year-old little boy, me, ran up to Jesus and hugged him. He picked me up and carried me to a seat and held me in his arms. He hugged me. I didn't say anything, but he knew my tossings. He knew I was frightened. There were no answers, and the future seemed so dim. As he hugged me, he said, trust me. Trust me. It was real, a personal miracle. He held me for a long time that night until he knew I understood what he meant. I told a few people, just a few people about this, and every time I tell it, tears come to my eyes. And the feeling I experienced that night renews itself in me. We must trust Jesus as a child trusts. Totally. Because of this, whatever turns out to be the ultimate result of this disease, it's not the burden it was before. He made no promises, nor did he reveal the future, but he provided the format for living out the rest of my life with just 2 words. Trust me. Boy, it all boils down to trust, doesn't it? Whenever I'm afraid, Lord, I'll trust in you. We trust that he's there. We trust that he's carrying us. We trust with childlike faith that it's going to be all right. Something we have to recognize with Psalm 56 is that it doesn't have a Hollywood ending. It doesn't have the fairy tale ending. It doesn't say they all lived happily ever after. It has David offering up to God thanks. It has David offering to God praise. And David knows in this struggle, he's not out of the woods yet. He's not sure if his life may end tomorrow. But regardless of what comes his way, he is sure that he's trusting in God. And how about you? Whether it's people who are striking fear into your heart or whether it's life situations, we have a God you can trust, a God who is for you. Believe that. Embrace that. Live that. We'd like to give you a few moments of silent prayer now, whatever you might be facing. And why not just let Jesus hug you for a little while? To hold you close and listen to those words that he has to say. The same words he spoke to Randy. Trust me. Take some time and seek him now. Only trust him. Only trust him. Only trust him now. He will save you. He will save you. He will save you now. Lord, help us trust you. For Jesus' sake. Amen.